like when I'm trying to fall asleep or when I hear a certain song. My name is Chloe, and I'm 28. At the time, I was working as a civilian analyst for a defense contractor, which sounds way more impressive than it was. Mostly, I just crunched numbers and stared at screens in a windowless office building. But every now and then, things got intense. This particular day, it was intense. And it was all because of Mark. Mark, my ex. My ex who, for some godforsaken reason, was still working in the same damn department as me. You'd think with all the money these places make, they could afford to put exes on different floors, or even in different buildings. But no, not a chance. We were stuck together, breathing the same recycled air, pretending like the last 3 years of our lives hadn't completely imploded. He was always so growth mindset man about everything after the breakup. 2. Like he'd suddenly found enlightenment in therapy sessions he probably went to just to make me look bad. All about boundaries and personal growth. It was nauseating. He acted like I was the toxic one. Like he hadn't completely suffocated me with his neediness. He was always so sweet and understanding in public. But behind closed doors, he was a different person. He'd agree to things, promise to change, and then the moment we were alone, it was like a switch flipped. He became this burnt-out partner, emotionally exhausted and just numb, and it was always my fault. Somehow, he used to try, I'll give him that, but then he just gave up. And then he made me feel like I was the one who pushed him to that point. It was never ending. Anyway, that morning, the air in the office was thick, not just with the usual stale coffee and printer ink smell, but with this tension, we were on the cusp of something big, a live mission, whatever that means. All I knew was that everyone was buzzing, and I had a feeling Mark was going to be right in the thick of it, which meant I'd have to see him, interact with him, maybe even talk to him. The thought alone made my stomach clench. It wasn't that I missed him, God no. It was just the idea of him seeing me, seeing how fine I was without him, how I'd moved on, even if I hadn't really, not completely. I hated the thought of him having that kind of power over me, even if it was just in my head. I had tried to avoid him since the breakup, but it was impossible in our setup. We were both analysts on the same project, and sometimes, for these live missions, we'd be in the same situation room, staring at the same screens, tracking the same data. It was like they designed the whole place to torture me. Every time he'd walk by my desk, I'd feel this irrational surge of anger. He'd act so casual, so polite, like we were just colleagues. Good morning, Chloe, he'd say, his voice flat, emotionless, and I'd just nod, maybe grunt something unintelligible, my teeth practically grinding. The nerve of him, acting like nothing happened, like he didn't systematically dismantle every good thing in my life. He'd always frame it like I was the one who wanted everything to be about me, but he was the one who constantly needed reassurance, who needed me to validate him. He was a too nice guy in public, always people-pleasing, avoiding conflict, letting everyone walk all over him. But then he'd come home and take it all out on me. He'd tell me I was too demanding, too emotional, and then he'd get upset if I didn't immediately drop everything to coddle his fragile ego. It was exhausting. So, this morning, the mission brief was scheduled for 0900. Everyone was in the main conference room, waiting for the higher-ups to lay out the plan. I walked in, trying to be invisible, and of course, the only empty seat was directly across from Mark. My heart just sank. I considered turning around, saying I had to use the restroom, anything. But everyone was already looking at me, so I sat down, stiff as a board, pretending to be utterly engrossed in my notepad. I could feel his eyes on me. I just knew it. He was probably thinking about how he dodged a bullet or some other ridiculous thing his new therapist probably told him to say. He was always doing that, trying to rewrite our history, minimizing my efforts, making it sound like he was the one doing all the heavy lifting in our relationship. He'd always tell stories about our past in a way that just completely erased my role, like I was just some passive observer in my own life. The briefing started. It was all about coordinates and comms and contingency plans. My mind was miles away, though, just replaying every argument we ever had. Every time he made me feel small, every time he pretended to be this perfect, understanding guy, only to turn around and weaponize my insecurities later. He'd bring up my fears, my anxieties, during arguments, just to shut me down. It was cruel, and then he'd call it honesty. Then, the senior analyst, a stern woman named Miller, started talking about the go-no-go criteria. This was the critical part. She mentioned that any significant personnel issue, especially anything that could compromise focus or team cohesion, would be an immediate abort. My ears perked up. Personnel issue. Interesting. I glanced at Mark. He was scribbling notes, looking completely engrossed, probably thinking about how important he was, how he was saving the world or whatever. He always loved being the hero. I hated that about him. He was always putting on a show, sweet in public, but then he'd be cruel to me the moment we were alone. It wasn't a conscious decision at first. It was more like an idea, a tiny, insidious seed that planted itself in my mind. The thought of him, this man who had put me through hell, being so calm, so focused, so successful right in front of me, it just gnawed at me. And then Miller repeated, any significant personnel issue, the seed started to sprout. I remembered all the times he'd accused me of being too emotional, of making a scene. All the times he'd told me I was overreacting. This would be the ultimate overreaction, wouldn't it? The ultimate scene. And it would be his fault, in a roundabout way. If he hadn't been there, if he hadn't made my life a living hell for the past year, I wouldn't even be having these thoughts. It was his fault for showing up, for existing, for making me feel like this. My breathing started to get shallower. I made it happen. Of course. I'm not proud of it. But I did. I focused on the tightness in my chest, on the slight tremor in my hands. I thought about all the times he had gaslighted me, rewritten events, denied things he clearly said. This was my chance to rewrite something, to make him squirm, to finally make him see what he had done to me. I started to sway slightly in my chair. Miller was still droning on, oblivious. The room was warm, too warm. I felt a bead of sweat trickle down my temple. I was starting to sell it, even to myself. My heart rate sped up. Genuine panic or not. My body was responding. I dropped my pen with a clatter. Everyone looked. Mark looked. His eyes, for a split second, registered something, a flicker of concern. Maybe, or maybe just annoyance. I didn't care. I needed more. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressed my palms against them. A little moan escaped my lips. It wasn't loud, just a soft, distressed sound. Enough to get attention. Miller stopped talking, mid-sentence. Chloe, are you all right? She asked, her voice sharp with concern. I shook my head, my hands still pressed to my face. I could feel the blood rushing to my ears. My breathing became ragged, more pronounced. I started to hyperventilate, just slightly, enough to make it believable. I can't breathe, I gasped, pulling my hands away from my face. My eyes were wide, a little teary. I managed to squeeze out a few. It wasn't hard. Thinking about Mark always brought me close to tears anyway, but not for the reasons he thought. It was just pure, unadulterated rage. I started to make little whimpering noises, clutching at my chest. Mark was out of his seat in an instant. Of course he was. The too nice guy had to be the hero. Didn't he? Chloe. What's wrong? He said, his voice laced with that fake concern he always used when he was trying to look good in front of other people. He was always so good at that. Putting on a show. Are you having a panic attack? His voice, so calm, so infuriatingly rational, just fueled my performance. I nodded frantically, still gasping. Yes. I can't. My voice trailed off. A pathetic, broken sound. I slumped forward slightly, letting my head hang. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. The mission was secondary now. All eyes were on me. And on Mark, standing awkwardly beside my chair. He tried to touch my shoulder, and I flinched dramatically, pulling away as if his touch was poison. It was poison. In a way, he was poison. Someone get some water? Miller barked, already on her feet. Another colleague, a young intern, scurried out of the room. Mark, can you help her to the quiet room? Mark hesitated for a fraction of a second. I saw it. That tiny flicker of, oh, God, this is inconvenient. It was all I needed. He swallowed, nodded, and then, very gently, tried to help me up. I leaned heavily on him, letting my weight practically drag him down. He grunted slightly, but didn't complain. He wouldn't, not in front of everyone. He always made grand gestures, but he gave the bare minimum when it came to real effort, and then expected me to be grateful. He'd promised things with no intention of delivering, just to keep me quiet. It was infuriating. We shuffled out of the conference room, me pretending to be on the verge of collapse, him half carrying me. I could hear the murmurs, the whispers. Poor Chloe. Is she okay? No one was saying poor Mark. Were they? No one was saying look at what he did to her, but they should have been. This was all his doing. All of it. He led me to the quiet room, a small, dimly lit space with a couple of armchairs. He practically deposited me in one of them. The intern came back with a plastic cup of water, her eyes wide with concern. I took a small sip, still pretending to tremble. Thank you, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Chloe, what triggered this? Mark asked, his voice low, almost gentle, too gentle. It was that voice he used when he was trying to manipulate me, to make me feel like he was the victim. He'd use my trauma as a shield, bringing up past issues to avoid taking accountability for his own actions. I looked at him, my eyes still a bit watery, but with a hint of something else, something only he would recognize, something bitter and accusing. You, I whispered, making sure the intern could hear. Her eyes darted between us. Perfect? Mark's face stiffened. He knew exactly what I was doing. Chloe, this isn't the time or place, he said, his voice a little strained now. Isn't it? I asked, my voice gaining a little strength, a little edge. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to be here? Seeing you, pretending like everything's fine, when you completely shattered me. I let a tear escape, just one, and let it roll down my cheek. It was a well-timed tear, I thought. The intern looked horrified. She shifted uncomfortably, clearly caught in the middle of something she didn't understand. Mark just stared at me, his jaw clenched. He knew I was laying it on thick, but he couldn't call me out. Not now. Not when I was supposedly having a full-blown panic attack. He was trapped, and it felt good. Miller entered the room, her expression serious. Chloe, are you feeling any better? I shook my head weakly. Still feel really shaky? It's hard to focus. I think I need to go home. Miller sighed. All right. Mark, can you escort Chloe home? We can't have anyone compromising their focus on a mission day. Mark's head snapped up. Me, he blurted out, then immediately tried to recover. I mean, of course, happy to, but the mission. The mission will proceed, but your role can be filled. We can't risk NIMA distractions, Miller said, looking pointedly at me, then at Mark. We need everyone at 100%. And clearly, that's not the case right now. That's when I heard it, over the intercom. The announcement that sent a shiver of perverse satisfaction down my spine. Attention all personnel. Due to an unforeseen personnel issue, the live mission scheduled for 0900 has been aborted. Stand by for further instructions. Aborted. Just like that. Because of me. I looked at Mark. His face was a mask of disbelief, anger, and a hint of something that looked like despair. It was glorious. He drove me home in silence. The entire ride, I just stared out the window, occasionally letting out a small, shaky sigh, just to remind him I was still recovering. He was fuming. I could tell. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. He knew I had done it on purpose, and he couldn't say a damn thing. It was like a silent victory lap. Every time he got close to admitting his own fault in our relationship, he'd backpedal or blame me. This was the ultimate backpedal for him, a public humiliation he couldn't deny. He always demanded transparency from me, but he'd hide his own lies, his own betrayals. It was a double standard he lived by. He pulled up to my apartment building. Are you going to be okay? He asked, his voice flat, devoid of any genuine concern now. I turned to him, putting on my most vulnerable, fragile face. I don't know, Mark. I really don't know. This was a lot. I just need time to recover. From everything, I let the everything hang in the air. A silent accusation. He just nodded, his gaze fixed on the steering wheel. Right. He didn't offer to walk me to the door. He didn't offer to stay. He just sat there, waiting for me to get out. And I did. I got out, walked slowly to my door, and didn't look back. The next few days were a blur of texts and calls from concerned colleagues, most of whom I ignored. Miller sent an email, a polite but firm reminder about personal wellness and professional conduct. I just deleted it. Mark, predictably, didn't contact me. I heard through the grapevine that the mission was rescheduled for the following week, and he was working around the clock to make up for lost time. Good. He deserved it. He deserved to suffer a little bit, after all the suffering he put me through. He always used past wrongs as leverage, keeping score, but he never remembered his own mistakes, only mine. I took a few days off, citing stress and anxiety, which wasn't entirely a lie. The whole ordeal had been stressful. In a way, stressful to orchestrate, stressful to maintain the facade, but I felt a strange sense of calm after it. Like a huge weight had been lifted, I finally felt like I had some power, some control. I had always felt like he controlled everything, from my emotions to my social life. He discouraged my growth, always wanting me to stay in his comfort zone. Now, I had turned the tables. When I finally went back to work, I braced myself. I walked in, head held high, expecting whispers, side eyes, maybe even direct confrontation. But there was nothing. Everyone was just normal, or at least they were pretending to be. Mark was nowhere to be seen. I later found out he had requested a temporary transfer to a different department, citing irreconcilable professional differences. He spun it as if I was the one who was professionally difficult. Of course. That he couldn't work with me because I was too unstable. It was just another example of his gaslighting, his constant need to rewrite the narrative. Life went on. The mission eventually went off without a hitch. Apparently, I saw Mark once or twice in the break room. Grabbing coffee, he'd stiffen, avoid eye contact, and then practically sprint away. It was clear he wanted nothing to do with me, which was fine, more than fine. It was exactly what I wanted. I didn't need him. I never needed him. He was the one who was needy, the one who clung to me, the one who couldn't stand to be alone. He just couldn't admit it. He was probably telling everyone I was crazy, that I was unstable. Let him. I didn't care. As long as he was out of my orbit. That's all that mattered. A few months passed. Things at work settled back into a routine. I even started dating someone new, a sweet guy named David. He was nice, almost too nice, but at least he didn't have any of Mark's baggage. He was the complete opposite. Actually, he listened. He validated. He didn't make everything about himself. It was a refreshing change. I thought maybe, just maybe, things were finally looking up. I was finally free of Mark, free of the constant drain of his presence. I felt lighter, happier. I deserved it, after everything. Then came the performance reviews. Our company did them annually, and they were a big deal. Promotions, bonuses, even continued employment hinged on them. I was confident. I had worked hard. I had delivered on all my projects, and I hadn't caused any personnel issues since that one time. I walked into Miller's office, expecting praise, maybe even a hint of a promotion. She sat across from me, her face unreadable. "Chloe," she began, her voice unusually somber. "We need to talk about your performance." My heart gave a little thump. "Okay," I said, trying to sound calm. "Your quantitative metrics are excellent," she continued, "and your project deliverables are consistently high quality." However, she paused, and I knew that however was going to hurt. "However, there have been some serious concerns raised about your interpersonal skills and your reliability under pressure." My stomach dropped. What are you talking about?" "Specifically," she said, pulling out a file, "the incident on date of mission abort. Your health concerns, while understandable, led to the abortion of a critical live mission. This caused significant financial losses and a delay in crucial operations. Furthermore, there have been concerns raised about your ability to maintain professional boundaries, particularly with former colleagues." She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "Mark submitted a formal complaint, citing a hostile work environment due to your behavior." My jaw clenched. That bastard, he actually did it. He couldn't deal with the truth, so he had to spin it to make me the villain. "He's just bitter," I said, my voice rising slightly. "He's trying to sabotage me because I broke up with him." Miller raised an eyebrow. "Regardless of personal history, Chloe, the fact remains that a mission was aborted due to your incapacitation, and a colleague felt compelled to file a formal complaint. We value teamwork and reliability above all else. And frankly, your explanation for that day and your subsequent interactions have painted a picture of someone who struggles with accountability." I wanted to scream. Accountability. I was the victim here. He was the one who broke my heart, who emotionally abused me, who made my life a living hell. How was I supposed to be accountable for his actions? This was all his fault. All of it. He was always scorekeeping, using past wrongs as leverage. But he just conveniently forgot his own role in everything. "So, what does this mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Miller sighed. "A long, tired sound?" "It means, Chloe, that we are unable to offer you a promotion at this time. In fact, due to the severity of the incident and the formal complaint, we are placing you on a probationary period. Any further incidents? Any further disruptions? And we will have no choice but to terminate your employment." My world tilted. Probation. Termination. All because of him. All because I reacted. Because I was human. Because I had feelings. And he just got to walk away. The growth mindset man with his therapy sessions and his boundaries. I walked out of Miller's office in a daze. My head was spinning. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. I had been so sure I was in the clear, that I had won, but he, Mark, had managed to turn it all around, to make me pay for his mistakes. He had weaponized his own victimhood, just like he always did. He always seemed to remember my mistakes, but conveniently forgot his own. He was the one who was constantly rewriting history, telling stories in a way that erased my role and amplified his own. The probation period was hell. Every single thing I did, every interaction, felt scrutinized. My colleagues, even the ones who had seemed so concerned before, now kept a cautious distance. I could feel their eyes on me, judging. They probably thought I was crazy, or a liability. And it was all thanks to Mark. to his petty complaint, to his inability to just let things go. He always said he wanted me to grow, but he was always trying to control my comfort zone. It was infuriating. One day, a few weeks into my probation, I saw him again. He was in the cafeteria, laughing with some new colleagues. He looked happy, genuinely happy, not the fake, public happy he used to put on, but truly content. And it hit me like a punch to the gut. He had moved on. He had actually truly moved on. And I was stuck on probation, stuck with this black mark on my record, stuck with the lingering resentment and the bitterness that coiled in my stomach every time I thought of him. He glanced up then, caught my eye. His smile faltered for a second, a fleeting moment of recognition, and then it was gone. He looked right through me, like I was invisible, like I never even existed. And in that moment, I realized something. He didn't care. He didn't care about what I had done, or why I had done it. He hadn't just moved on from our relationship, he had moved on from me. He didn't even see me as a threat anymore. I was just a ghost. And I was still here, stuck in this miserable job, with this cloud hanging over me. All because of him. He was the one who ruined my life, who made me feel like I had to resort to desperate measures. He was the real villain, and he got to walk away, scot-free, while I was left to pick up the pieces. It's just so typical, isn't it? The good guys always win, even when they're actually the ones who started it all. I'm the one who paid the price, and he's off living his best life. It's a joke, a sick, twisted joke. And honestly, I still think I'm the victim here. I still think he ruined my life. And he just gets to pretend like he's this innocent, put-upon guy. He never did take accountability for anything, and it still burns.